making Parmesan, which is quite a different method of cheese making than Caffili, which I showed you previously. This uses skim milk, and you can't have any more than 2% butter fat in the milk, and that's because even though Parmesan only uses skim milk, it actually packs quite a punch because it matures for so long, and there's a special ingredient in it called lipase. So same setup as for the Caffili, the double boiler, and I've previously sterilised all the equipment. The whisk features heavily in this. You can also see the ingredients. We've got the calcium chloride, the rennet, and we've also got some stuff called lipase, which is extracted from goat's milk. And then the other ingredient, this time instead of mesophilic culture, we use stuff called thermophilic, and the reason why will become obvious as we go through the recipe. Okay, and we've got our milk. Now the milk we've got is home brand light milk and some organic full cream milk. The reason I've got the two types is because the home brand milk is only 1.4% butter fat, which is lower than the 2 that's needed, and I find that if I add the 2 litres of full cream organic, which is actually 4% butter fat, then it actually comes out quite well, and it's no more than 2.5, which the recipe calls for. Too little, I think you don't get the fullness of body within the Parmesan, but this method it seems to come out very well, and I've used this about 4 times now, this method. Okay, we'll move on to, and of course, the trusty recipe. This recipe is actually from the original cheese course that I took back in February last year. Okay, so I've added the milk in and brought it up to the temperature. The required temperature for this recipe is 35 degrees Celsius. So firstly we add in the calcium chloride to reverse a homogenization process. So there we go there. Stir that for a little bit. And then we add the thermophilic culture, which can survive a lot higher temperatures than mesophilic culture that you would normally use in cheddars and stuff like that. So just pop that in there. Stir that through as well. That direct set culture will rehydrate. Go through the process. Okay, so it's only a short time for the culture to work. It only takes 15 minutes, so we'll come back in 15. Okay, we've reached the 15 minutes, so the culture's well dissolved and mixed in. Okay, so next we add the lipase, which I've diluted with 20 ml of cool boiled water. Just add that in now. And that's what gives the cheese its very strong flavour. You can use 50% goat milk and 50% cow milk, but I don't have any goat milk available. And that way you wouldn't need to use lipase because it's naturally occurring in cheese, in goat's milk. Okay, now that's stirred through well, we'll be adding the rennet. The rennet I've diluted 2.5 mils to 60 mils of cool boiled water. So Remember, when you add rennet, always be stirring. Okay, so I'll stir that for about a minute, and then we'll put the lid on and leave it for 45 minutes. The reason I leave the lid on is to keep it at the same temperature without having to use the double boiler. It stays around 35 to 36, which is what this recipe calls for at this stage. Okay, that's well stirred. Take out the thermometer and the spoon and put it back in. See you in 45 minutes. Okay, the 45 minutes has elapsed. Let's check for a clean break. I can see straight away that's set fine. As you can see, it splits. So that's fine. Now we're going to use a whisk to cut the curds. The recipe calls for 4mm cuts. So I find that a whisk, simple like that, is easier to cut than using a knife. And this will get it into the 4mm size that we need without too many problems at all. So we shouldn't have too many chunks. They're bigger. So we'll go around 3 times just to make sure we've got them all. Okay, their cut's the right size. It's quite easy Parmesan. Okay, the recipe calls for us to let that stand now for 5 minutes. So we'll do that. Okay, the recipe now calls for us to stir for 10 minutes. I'll use the whisk. As you can see, a fair bit of the whey was expelled in that initial cutting. So by me stirring it with the whisk, it's going to get it down to the right size. You can see there's still quite a few large pieces in there. I need to get that down to 4 mils or rice size curds. So the whisk will help me do that. Now I'm supposed to maintain it at a temperature of 35 degrees. So once that's all done, we'll come back. Okay, 10 minutes stirring has elapsed. Okay, now the recipe calls for us to kick the temperature up to 42 degrees Celsius. So I'll do that now. So turn on the double boiler. And we're supposed to do this over a period of 30 minutes. So I'll just put the thermometer back in there. So I'll turn the heat down to low. So the double boiler should slowly raise the temperature of the curds up to 42 degrees. Okay, we've reached 42 degrees and we've got to stir now for 15 minutes to make sure that it doesn't mat. Once we've stirred for 15, then we have to raise the temperature to 52 degrees over 30 minutes. Okay, time's up. The curds have shrunk down to about the size of a grain of wheat. And now we need to turn the temperature up to 52 degrees Celsius. And we do that over the course of 30 minutes. And the curds will shrink again even further, so they'll be about the size of a grain of rice. So, I'll come back in 30 minutes. Okay, we've reached 52 degrees now on the thermometer, and you can see the individual sizes. It's quite small, and it should feel rubbery to touch. So, and it has a squeaky feeling on your skin, because it's the only way I can describe it, instead of normally the lower temperature cheeses are very spongy. The curd is about this stage. Okay, so the recipe now calls for us to let it sit for 30 minutes, so we'll do that at the target temperature. Okay, as you can see, the curds have settled well over the last 30 minutes, and just by having a look at, yeah, we've gone all the way down the bottom. As you can see, this is just whey now sitting on the top side here, so all the curds are sitting on the bottom. Okay, so we'll take it over to the sink and put it through the colander. Okay, here we are over at the sink. Let's get some of the whey off first. Okay, makes it a bit easy to pour, that's all. Now, as you can see, this is mostly whey at the moment, because like I said, the curds have formed a big lump at the bottom, which you can probably see. Okay, and there we go. Curds as you can now. Hands are fine if they're clean. Okay. As we can see there, we've got our curds. And it's draining well. Cheese press. I've got a different sized mould that I normally use. This one's just a little bit wider and flatter, so the whole side's been sterilised with vinegar, so there's no problems about germs there. So I'll just mill this up so that it'll be easier to fit into the cheese press. Just breaking it up into small pieces from that big lump. Now it's quite warm, it's quite rubbery, and the curds do indeed squeak on your skin. Okay. Now, I'm not adding any salt at this stage because Parmesan is a cheese that you brine. You actually soak the cheese after it's pressed into brine, and the cheese takes all of its salt from the briny liquid.